As we approach the new league year, let's ponder Miles Sanders' future in Carolina. Is it as simple as they cut him? We'll break down Sanders and the rest of the Panthers running back room right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And also be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays throughout the offseason, I'll be right here on the show answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. The best way to get those questions into me is by either adding me or DMing me. But of course, follow me first on Twitter at Julian Council to get those questions in for this week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And we are very close, North Carolina, to having FanDuel right here, March 11th. It will be here right around the corner and cannot wait. But on today's episode, let's conclude our position evaluations as Carolina Panthers and the rest of the NFL take in the NFL Scouting Combine this week in Indianapolis, and we inch closer to the start of the new league year on March 13th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the dot. We talked about the Panthers offensive line, how to fix it. We talked about the wide receivers and who may be a target for the Panthers. T. Higgins officially on the franchise tag in Cincinnati. Does not mean the Panthers still cannot pursue him. We talked about that yesterday. We'll see if anything materializes throughout the week in Indianapolis at the Combine. We've also talked about the Panthers tight end group. We've talked about the defensive line. We talked about linebackers, corners. Today, let's focus in on the Carolina Panthers running back group and where they go from here as the Panthers prepare to get into the real meat and bones of the offseason now that they have their front office and coaching staff settled. Starting off with Miles Sanders. Last year, Miles Sanders was a big signing for the Carolina Panthers. He was coming off of a Pro Bowl season, played in the Super Bowl in Philadelphia, and with Deuce Staley here, Frank Reich here, having relationships in the past dating back to their time in Philadelphia with Miles Sanders, it made a lot of sense for the Carolina Panthers to want to bring Miles Sanders here to be that lead back for them. I was fine with D'Onta Foreman coming back to Carolina, and I felt like they could get him at a cheap rate. We saw what Chicago paid him, $3 million for that season last year, and I would have been totally fine with Foreman being that guy. But the Panthers were looking for somebody who they had familiarity with, somebody who could fit their offense more, and somebody who could do a little bit more than what Foreman could do. Foreman's just a straight line downhill running back, while Sanders can get downhill and also has shown the ability to catch the ball. We did not see that Miles Sanders this past season in Carolina. We did not see the Miles Sanders. The Carolina Panthers doled out a 4-year, $25.4 million contract, including a 5.9 signing bonus, $13 million guaranteed, and an average annual salary of $6.3 million over the 4 seasons of him being in Carolina. We did not see the player that was able to sign the largest free agent running back contract last season. The running back market, there's been a lot of issues for guys like Josh Jacobs getting paid. Same thing with Saquon Barkley. We saw the same case play out in Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor until he did get paid. Running backs aren't getting paid. If you've listened to the show over the last couple of years, you have heard me say federal minimum wage. That's what running backs should be getting. $7.25 an hour, 25 hours a week, no overtime pay, no holidays, none of that. Use them, abuse them, and then lose them. Get another guy in there. Now, there's some running backs like a Christian McCaffrey who are different, who are worth the price of admission. But Miles Sanders, I didn't love this deal. And you listened to me say how much I dislike this deal because I don't feel like you need to pay running backs. The Panthers had just come off of a season where they watched D'Onta Foreman and they watched Chuba Hubbard look like part 2, a smash and dash here in Carolina. It was not necessary to give Miles Sanders the kind of contract that the Panthers gave him last year. And a year later, less than that, it looks even worse. His 2023 stats, 129 carries, 432 yards, a touchdown, only averaged 3.3 yards per attempt. A lot of that had to do with the offensive line issues. Rushing success rate, according to Pro Football Reference, was 40.3%, the lowest of his career. His PFF overall grade was a 60.8, which was 54th out of 59 qualifying running backs in the NFL in 2023. 27 receptions, 154 yards, had a 65.9 catch percentage, which is pretty good comparative to what the wide receivers did this past season. But his receiving success rate was only a 39%. That is not worth 4 years, $25.4 million, including a $5.9 million signing bonus, $13 million guaranteed. And the average salary is $6.3 million per year. You did not need to give him that much money. And this goes back to the conversation that we had of, is it Scott Bitterer? Is it the coaching staff, the whole collaboration? If Deuce Staley is not the running backs coach / assistant head coach in Carolina last year, I don't think the Panthers are giving out this kind of contract to Miles Sanders. Deuce Staley, a former running back, a good running back in his playing time, his playing days in the NFL, he still believes that running backs matter in terms of paying them a lot of money. I don't subscribe to that. I do think running backs matter in terms of on the field, but we've seen plenty of guys come in out of college as late round picks and have success. Isaiah Pacheco, 7th round pick out of Rutgers, has helped the Chiefs win back-to-back Super Bowls. You don't have to pay these guys millions of dollars as free agents to come to your team to get the kind of production that they got from a player in Chuba Hubbard this past season and a player that they got in Deontay Foreman the year prior to that. So what do the Carolina Panthers do with Miles Sanders now looking at his contract? It's $11 million guaranteed at signing. It's a signing bonus. That's 2023 salary and 2024 salary. Confusing. Looking at Spot Track, they have it written down. It's $13 million, but then lower down on the pays have $11 million guaranteed at signing. Either way, his 2024 salary is guaranteed. An important date to remember, Carolina Panther fans, March 16th. A $2 million roster bonus is due to Miles Sanders on March 16th. If he's still on the roster, he gets $2 million. Under no circumstance is Miles Sanders, based off of what he did last year, deserving of that $2 million roster bonus. So what did the Carolina Panthers do then? Do they find a way to trade him? Do they cut him? Looking at the Panthers were to cut him today up until March 16th, it would be an $8.4 million dead cap hit in 2024, and they would lose $750,000 against the salary cap. Not a ton, still losing some salary cap room, and you don't love that. If they release him post March 16th all the way until pre-June 1, the Panthers would have a $10.4 million dead cap hit, and they would lose $2.7 million against the salary cap. So saving $2 million as far as how much they would lose and dead cap wise, if they're able to part ways with Miles Sanders before March 16th. If they release him post June 1, they split the dead cap hit. It's 5.4 in 2024, 2.9 in 2025, and they save $2.2 million against salary cap. That might be the best thing for the Carolina Panthers to do. They can't use that money until post June 1. If they're able to trade Miles Sanders by March 16th, they can save $3.2 million. I do not think a team in the league, after seeing what he did last year, how much he's being paid, is wanting to take on what's really only one more year of that salary, as it's a 2-year deal. It's 4 years, but really 2 years where all the guarantees are. The signing bonus, 2023, 2024. After that, the Panthers could get out of it. Miles Sanders is somebody who said he is committed to Carolina as long as they're committed to him. He signed a 4-year deal. He wants to be here for 4 years. Now, if the Panthers get rid of him after this season, then, well, so be it. And that's my expectation. The Carolina Panthers will move on from Miles Sanders. Will it be before March 16th, or will they do it post June 1? For me, it doesn't really matter. I think the salary cap space, you would prefer to have that instead of losing salary cap space. So waiting until June 1, they could release him now, and they can have him as a post June 1 designation. That's something the Carolina Panthers could do. They could release him right away and just let him be a free agent and go elsewhere. He's getting his money no matter what, which is a good situation for Miles Sanders, but he cannot be on the roster come March 16th. So the Panthers really cannot wait until June to get rid of him. That's just not something that they can eat. And that roster bonus of $2 million is what's saving them as far as not losing $2.75 million against salary cap if they release him before March 16th. So to me, the simple answer and what the Carolina Panthers need to do is cut bait right away. Do it now, do it tomorrow, just do it before March 16th. Take on the dead cap hit of $8.4 million. Don't have any more dead cap. Go to next year. Just take on the cap hit, lose $750,000, and be done with it. The roster bonus, you cannot hand that to a player who produced at the level that Miles Sanders produced at last year, which was among the worst running backs in the NFL in 2023. Cut him, move on. Reich's gone. Staley's gone. It makes sense for the Carolina Panthers to move on from Miles Sanders. Unfortunately, it did not work out. But that's the NFL. It's a business. You got to move on. So Miles Sanders likely on his way out of Carolina. Does that open up the door for Chuba Hubbard to be a workhorse back in Carolina in 2024? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. What's the first thing you do if you had an extra hour in your day? A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. In my mind, the smart business for the Carolina Panthers is just to cut bait with Miles Sanders. Yes, you're going to lose $750,000 against the salary cap. You could wait post June 1. You could be able to save that $2 million. And I'm wondering, is there a balancing act where, okay, you give them the roster bonus and then you cut them later on? I don't really see why the Panthers would do that. Just cut bait. You lose a little bit of the salary cap. I think Brant Till's a smart guy. We've seen what he did in Kansas City as far as maneuvering their cap, negotiating with Patrick Mahomes over that record contract deal, figuring things out with Chris Jones prior to the season where he sat out week 1 against the Lions, and they got a deal done for him to come back. And who knows how that plays out in Kansas City now with Brant Till is gone and Chris Jones still wanting to have a massive deal to be there as one of the highest paid defensive tackles in the NFL. He's a smart dude. There's a reason why David Tepper brought him into Carolina to try and fix some things and clean up the mess of Scott Fitter and of Samir Suleiman to maybe even a lesser extent. I think he's smart enough to figure out how the Panthers can manage losing $750,000 against the salary cap and then moving forward. It's not like it's $8 million. If it was $2 million and I could get it 3, 4, that would be a problem. Less than $1 million. I think the Carolina Panthers can eat that and they can move on, especially when you have a running back in Chuba Hubbard, who is only going to cost you $1.2 million as far as the cap goes in 2024 once the new league year starts. And a back in Chuba Hubbard who is better than Miles Sanders a year ago. Looking at Chuba Hubbard's stats, 238 carries compared to Miles Sanders having a 129 carries. Look, it had 902 yards Chuba Hubbard did have. Miles Sanders had 432 yards. Chuba Hubbard had 5 touchdowns. Miles Sanders had 1 touchdown, and Chuba Hubbard had 3.8 yards per carry compared to Miles Sanders only having 3.3 yards per carry. Looking even deeper into Chuba Hubbard's stats this past season, only had a 47.5% rushing success rate. Like I mentioned with Miles Sanders, the offensive line, 7 different left guards, 8 different right guards. You've heard it ad nauseum. I'm sure you're probably tired of hearing me say that. Just going to keep beating it into your brains, and you'll never forget the pain you had to go through, which I'm sure you weren't going to forget it anyways. But just the Panthers not having any sort of consistency in continuity on the O-line this past season. And one of the reasons that they didn't run the ball well was that. And you can see the numbers as far as rushing success rate for both Hubbard and Sanders were down because of those injuries. And also maybe even some of, especially Miles Sanders' own issues that he had as he was dealing with the groin. And even when he was back, the health did not look like the same back that we saw a year ago. And it's possible the groin was a problem all year long. He was not on the injury report later on in the season, but it's still possible that he just was never able to get up to speed because of the time he missed in the preseason, the kind of impact that had. I've never, knock on wood, had a groin injury they had to deal with like that. So I don't know what the recovery process is, especially playing in the NFL. Maybe that's part of the reason why he struggled. But what I do know is Chuba Hubbard showed us in 2022, playing behind Deontay Foreman, that he was pretty darn good. he's had his moments. And that's the thing about Chuba Hubbard's career that's so interesting to me. When McCaffrey went down in 2021, he had the opportunity to be the lead back in that situation, and he was just okay. Then the year after that, they brought in Deontay Foreman to be the backup for Christian McCaffrey. We never saw Foreman until McCaffrey was traded to San Francisco. Then Foreman became the lead back. I think back to a game on Christmas Eve against the Lions where the Panthers just ran wild, setting franchise records for rushing yards and for total yards in both the half and for entire game. Hubbard was one of those guys at the beginning of the game just breaking loose and looked awesome. And it's unfortunate that he didn't get the chance after McCaffrey left to be the guy. Then last year, they brought in Sanders. He was supposed to be the guy. Then Chuba got the opportunity to be the guy based off of his performance and actually beating him out. Now we sit here. I think Miles Sanders is likely out the door. The Panthers have a couple of younger backs and just back of the roster guys who will likely be cut once we get down to training camp. Well, here in Charlotte, not going down to Spartanburg anymore, where it looks like Chuba Hubbard is primed to be the workhorse back. I talked to my buddy Josh Klein of the Riot Report back when the Panthers drafted Chuba Hubbard in 2021, that 11-man draft class. So one of my favorite picks in that draft was Chuba Hubbard, based off of what he had done back during the 2019 season at Oklahoma State. 2020 with the pandemic, wasn't the same player, but in 2019, led college football in rushing, went absolutely insane. And for all the faults of Matt Rhule, the one thing he got right in Carolina was listening to his wife, Julie, when she said, remember that guy from Oklahoma State who ran all over our asses back in 2019? He's there. You should draft him. And that's what Matt Rhule did. The Panthers didn't necessarily need a running back. When they had Chris McCaffrey, I always felt like any carry not to Chris McCaffrey is a wasted carry. And Josh kind of pushed back on me when I said I was excited about Chuba Hubbard, being like, if you believe that every carry that is not McCaffrey carry is a wasted carry, then why on earth would you want this guy to be on the team? Because if McCaffrey goes down, I believe this guy can give you something. And we saw McCaffrey go down in 21, unfortunately, on that Thursday night game against the Texans. And we saw Chuba Hubbard come in and give the Panthers something. Now, was he great? No. He was a rookie stepping to that situation. I thought he was okay. And he had issues catching the football. He had issues as far as returning kicks as well. It was a learning curve for Chuba Hubbard to get to be more of a complete back, more than just somebody who's just going to be more of a downhill rusher. And I think he's finally started to become that kind of player as we head into the rest of this offseason and potentially head into the season with him as the number one back in Carolina. Looking at Pro Football Focus, his overall grade this past season was a 77.2, which ranks 16th out of 59 qualifying running backs. That's very good for a former fourth rounder who had not been given the opportunity to really be the number one guy. He finally earned that opportunity last season. His run grade was a 79.4, which is 14th out of 52 qualifying running backs. His receiving grade, that's been an issue for Chuba, was a 62.1, the best of his career, 28 out of 56 running backs. Now, his receiving success rate wasn't high. It was a 36.4%. I still don't look at Chuba as being someone that's sure-handed and somebody you really want to throw the ball to out of the backfield, but he's grown with that. And that's what we want to see, the development of players. And we have seen through multiple coaching staffs, whether it's been Matt Rhule, then Steve Wilkes, last year Frank Reich, then Thomas Brown, and well, I guess Chris Tabor. We've seen multiple coaching staffs work with Chuba Hubbard, and he's been able to overcome a lot of their own mishaps and develop into a player who I think is deserving of getting an opportunity here in Carolina to be that lead back for a season. Now, do I think that Chuba Hubbard, somebody the Panthers should invest in long-term? No, no. Chuba Hubbard this year, would love to see him get that opportunity. Then he can go out into the world as a free agent and go elsewhere, unless the Panthers are going to sign him to like a $2 million contract. I don't want to see the Panthers pay him a lot of money. He could go out there and lead the league in rushing, and I'm still going to be like, $3 million, that's as far as I'm wanting to go. And I say that now, but maybe I won't feel that way at the time. I do, though, think that Chuba Hubbard has an opportunity to be the workhorse back this year. I think that he's somebody who could be capable of doing it. He played 59% of snaps this past season offensively, up that number this upcoming season. Love what he's done. Think he can fit into what Dave Canales wants to do, especially we saw what Seattle did for all those years as Pete Carroll was their head coach, and they wanted to run the football with Marshawn Lynch. He ain't Marshawn Lynch. Understand that. Why not find a way to have success again in the run game like that in 2022 with Chuba Hubbard as the lead back? Would love to see that for him. Would love to see that for the Carolina Panthers, and think that that is where they're headed as of right now, because things can, of course, change. The combine is going on right now in Indianapolis. The Panthers and the rest of the NFL is looking at some of the prospects. They're also focused on who else is out there free agency, what kind of trades it could make, and then looking later on in April towards the draft. Should the Panthers be interested in drafting a prospect maybe later on in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. The wait is almost over. North Carolina FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to our state. On March 11th, we'll finally be able to bet on all our favorite teams and all our favorite sports. With FanDuel, there's tons of ways for you to get in on the action. You can bet on everything from the money line to over-unders, which team will win this year's Tobacco Road rivalry, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, with live betting, you can even pick which player will put up the next bucket and the one after that. See for yourself why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon so you can be the first to know when FanDuel goes live in North Carolina. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Taking a look at the rest of the Carolina Panthers depth chart as it comes. Taking a look at the rest of the Carolina Panthers depth chart as far as the running back room goes, we know Chuba Hubbard is going to be back again in 2024. Miles Sanders believes that he's going to be out the door, but currently on the roster. Those are the top 2 guys. The other returning players, Tariq Cohen, who was somebody fans asked a lot about last year as the Panthers were struggling offensively, trying to find anyone to help out, provide some speed, some playmaking ability. Fans harken back to the days when Tariq Cohen was playing in Chicago. It's been a while since Tariq Cohen was, I believe, an all-pro because of special teams prowess. It's been a long time since we saw that Tariq Cohen. The last time he played in an NFL game was during the 2020 pandemic season. Since then, suffered that hellacious knee injury down in Atlanta during that special teams play. Also tore his Achilles on IAG Live when he was trying to work his way back to the NFL. Got an opportunity last year, then was on the practice squad IR for a couple of weeks, and then the final week of the season thought was, hey, okay, why not? Team sucks. Season's already over. Yes, you want to beat Tampa Bay. Why not have a feel-good story out of this feel-bad season and allow Tariq Cohen to have an opportunity to dress out? That was not the case. Did not play at all for the Carolina Panthers, but he is back. Dan Morgan, as he was taking over as the interim general manager before actually taking the GM job and the president of football operations job, he decided to bring back Tariq Cohen along with Mike Boone and with Spencer Brown coming back into the fold in Carolina. We'll see. I'm going to continue to tell y'all, I would love to see it happen as far as Tariq Cohen, North Carolina kid, went to A&T, had success in Chicago. Unfortunate what's happened to him injury-wise. I would love to see him get an opportunity to be out there for the Carolina Panthers. Am I anticipating we're going to see the same Tariq Hill we saw, which really been 6 years? It's really been since 2018 since he's made an impact in the league. I don't think that's going to be the guy we see. If it is, remarkable comeback story. Would love to see it. I don't feel like y'all should be obsessed. I'm not saying you're obsessed, but there's been a weird kind of, is he going to play? I don't know what you're really thinking you're going to get out of Tariq Cohen. Hope it happens, but keep the expectations low if it does happen for Tariq Cohen. Another player who is interesting and maybe back in Carolina is Raheem Blackshear, who is currently an exclusive rights free agent. The Panthers have not extended a qualifying offer. Once they do that, it's either sign it or don't play in 2024. If you are Raheem Blackshear, I would expect if he does get it, he will sign. What is interesting to me about that is the Carolina Panthers had a couple of guys that were restricted or exclusive rights free agents. Excuse me. We had LeBron Ray and Nick Thurman. Both of those guys were given deals back in January, and Raheem Blackshear was not among that list. So I'm wondering if maybe Dan Morgan's not interested, or if they wanted to wait to see who the offensive coaching staff would be before wanting to bring him back. Blackshear can help the Panthers out in special teams as he did last year. I like what he brings as a change of pace back. Talking about Chuba Hubbard not being a great receiver, Raheem Blackshear can be that receiving threat out of the backfield, and he also has some quality speed. The Panthers need some speed, absolutely, on the offensive side of the ball. I think it's worth bringing him back for a qualifying offer. Not quite sure how much that would cost. Well, I do. It's league minimum. He's already played 2 seasons, so whatever the league minimum for a player who has 2 accrued seasons would be. I don't know the exact number, but I know it'd be league minimum. It sounds like that would be something worth the Carolina Panthers exploring if they'd like to do that. Now, if they do, they still need to fill out the room. Tariq Cohen would be an awesome story if it happens. Mike Boone, quite honestly, have no idea who that is. Spencer Brown has shown promise under multiple coaching staffs and has not made the roster yet. Should the Panthers be interested in drafting somebody? They haven't drafted a running back since Chuba Hubbard in 2021. They're in the 4th round. They have tried to bring along guys like Miles Sanders for agency. That didn't work out. Chuba, of course, has ascended to the number 1 running back role. And outside of that, I don't see who the future would be in Carolina. Chuba has 1 more year left, and I think this is probably his last year in Carolina. And unless he's willing to come back on a very reduced salary, I think it should be his last year in Carolina, unless he just is an all-pro, has like the most ridiculous season in the history of the NFL as a running back, which I doubt is going to happen. Then, yes, move on from Chuba Hubbard. Don't pay a running back when you can just draft a running back. And this is a running back class that, looking just at Pro Football Focus and their big board, they don't have a running back listed until 54. And that running back is Jonathan Brooks, who's coming off a torn ACL that he suffered in the middle of the season last fall for Texas. He's at the combine, not doing any work, of course. The thought is he'll be ready by training camp, which would be great for him. Loved him at Texas last year. Unfortunate that they lost him, and unfortunate for him that he can get to play later on in the season in the playoff. This is not a draft class where there's that wow back. I would have thought Travion Henderson at Ohio State would have been that had he come back. Now, next year, you got dudes like Amarion Hampton, Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State. You have Quinshot Judkins, who transferred to Ole Miss to Ohio State. A lot of great backs then coming out next year. This year, plenty of backs that I do like. And the prospects I'm looking at, the Panthers went over it yesterday. I always try to remember these things off the top of my head, but I wrote it down this time. Their 2nd round pick we know is 33rd overall. Their 3rd round pick, 65th overall. Neither one of those picks need to go to a running back. Day 2 pick, no. Just no. Day 3 pick, sure. They have 4 of those. Their own 4th round pick. San Francisco and Tennessee's 5th round pick. San Francisco's from the McCaffrey trade, the last pick from that trade. Tennessee's is from the Dennis Daly trade. And Arizona's from the 6th round, is a 6th round pick from the Robbie Anderson trade. The best work Scott Fitterer ever did in Carolina was getting something for Robbie Anderson, who got kicked out of the game by Steve Wilkes and had to come back and try to save any value he had. And he has done absolutely nothing in the league. God bless him. I'm not trying to crap on a dude, but my Lord, thank you, Scott Fitterer, for being able to get something out of that situation that played out. That 4th round pick, but really the 2 5th round picks, that's where I'm looking for a running back. And some of the guys I'm looking at, Ray Davis at Kentucky this past year, I thought he was outstanding. Loved him in the game against Louisville, where really they were just fueled by hate. That's how they beat the Cards that afternoon. Ray Davis, just the L's down all day long. I think he's somebody that's worth looking at for the Carolina Panthers. He's kind of a bowling ball kind of back. He played at Vanderbilt, was good there, went to Kentucky this past season. Marshawn Lloyd played at both USCs, the real one out in California, then the one down there in Columbia. He was in Columbia for the first couple of seasons before going to USC last year. Didn't get a ton of carries, but he's listed as 107th on the big board for PFF. I'm not the biggest Marshawn Lloyd fan. He tore his ACL early in his college career. I want to say it was his first fall camp there at South Carolina. He tore his ACL. He's supposed to be a big player for them that year, and I don't know if he's ever really bounced back to who he was back in high school up in the D.C. area. I've never been the biggest Marshawn Lloyd fan, to be honest. Audric Estime, another one of those bowling balls. This man is massive out of Notre Dame. I wouldn't be opposed. He would fit to the downhill kind of rushing style the Panthers maybe want to get back to. We'll see if that's exactly what they want to do. I don't think it provides too much outside of that, but is a solid runner. Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin, dealt with a lot of injuries this past year, him and Chez Mellusi. He's somebody I like a lot. He was one of the best backs in college football, if not the best back in college football in 2022. He's worth a look for sure. Will Shipley, local kid, played at Weddington, of course, played at Clemson. He got banged up a little bit at Clemson, fortunately, at the bowl game where he got hurt. That wasn't significant at all. He's somebody who can fit the mold as a receiver and a back. I honestly think he's a better receiver than he is a back. I'm not saying that he should move to a slot, but if you want to find a change of pace, you have Chuba Hubbard back there running the ball, running hard. Shipley also runs hard as hell, and I'm sure he's a Panthers fan. And that's the guy who would be, I think, a fan favorite, just how hard he plays and we can provide to you in the pass game. And no, back in high school, because white running back, let's just be honest, here in the Charlotte area, people are trying to say, oh, this is like the next Christian McCaffrey. No, it didn't really work out that way at Clemson, but a good player overall. And I do think probably a round 4 or 5 kind of pick in this upcoming draft. Trey Benson out of Florida State. Previously, I think it was at Oregon, and I think there might have been another stop. All those FSU guys played at like 7 schools, but Benson's a good player. I wouldn't be against that. But the guys I really like out of that group, I like Shipley maybe the most. And this is not even Charlotte bias. I just think just looking at a back who can give you more than just running the football, which I think is important nowadays. Will Shipley absolutely provides that to you. And it can be easier than to go just get the dude to just go run into the wall for you. So I think Shipley is probably the guy I like the most. And Braylon Allen after that. And Ray Davis. I like Ray Davis a lot. But yeah, those are the guys I'd be interested in. Any of those backs in like that 5th round, one of either San Francisco or Tennessee's pick. I'm guessing Tennessee's pick is probably higher, obviously, since San Francisco, played in the Super Bowl. Why not go out there and do that? So we'll see how it works out. I do think the Panthers should invest in a running back in the draft, and hopefully that running back will end up being their lead back in 25 if that's what they decide to do. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays I'll be here answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday.